I hope you got a chance to practice interceptor. Okay. Uh, Please try to practice. Only understanding the concept will not be enough. Yeah, I know we all are busy with our office work, but please find out some time and practice the things. Today, we are going to start a new topic called observable. And let's understand what is observable, why observable is so popular today, how this observable is better than promise, how we can relate this observable with promise. We'll understand all these things. Now, if we try to understand what is observable? An observable is an entity that emits or publishes multiple data values. We can say stream of data over the time asynchronously. Hmm. An observable is an entity which publishes data over the time asynchronously. Actually, there are two things. Whenever we think about publisher and consumer concept, there will be someone who will provide the data and there will be someone who will consume the data. So whenever we think about data consumption, we always have two approaches. One is pull approach, one is push approach. What we mean by pull and push? Hmm. There are two things. One thing is when the consumer needs some data, the consumer will go and ask the publisher, hey, I need the data. When the consumer goes and asks, hey, I need some data, the publisher gives the data to consumer. So that is not, that is on demand, we are asking the data. The other approach is the publisher will keep publishing the data. The publisher will keep publishing the data and the subscriber will get a notification whenever there is a new data, right? So the second one is nothing but observable. In case of observable, what happens? There will be a publisher, there will be a consumer, or we can say subscriber. If we understand technically, for last 2 3 minutes, whatever we are talking very high level. If I come to the point, in Angular, what happens? Suppose I want to develop a Flipkart like page. If I want to develop a Flipkart like page, my Angular will need some data to render in the UI. So we can say the Angular component is a consumer of the data. Angular component or Angular service is a consumer or is a subscriber who needs some data. If my Angular component is a consumer of the data, who is the provider of the data then?
Maybe the API.
The
API.
API. The API is the provider of the data. So there will be always two people. One is provider, one is consumer. The API is provider, the UI is consumer. So again, whenever we think about provider consumer concept, there are two things. The consumer will send a request, will ask data, the provider will give the data at once. That is how it works in promise. In promise, the subscriber will go and ask the data only once. Hey, give me data. The provider will give the data. If there are 1,000 records or 10,000 records, all the data will come at once. then the consumer will deal with the data. Let it be 100 data, 1000 data, 10,000 data, everything will come at once. But in case of observable, the consumer will say, hey, I am subscribing you. So when I am subscribing you, it means whenever you have new set of data, please send me a notification. And it is the responsibility of the provider. The provider will send data to the consumer whenever the provider has some new set of data. So that way, the consumer gets a notification every time there is some data gets published from the producer side. We are yet to start the topic. I'm just giving you the background. Hope you people are able to relate the things, or I'm confusing you.
No, we are getting it.
No, no,
Okay.
not confusing, sir.
Okay,
Please go ahead.
great. Yeah. So if we understand technically what is observable, an observable is an entity that publishes data over the time, not at once, asynchronously. Yes. Observables are lazy collections of multiple values over time. Why lazy collections? Why they are called lazy? Because if there is no subscriber, the observable will not emit the data. If there is a subscriber, then only it will emit the data. If there is no subscriber, it will not emit the data. Because of that, it is called lazy. And it sends multiple values over the time. Multiple values over the time means if the provider has 10,000 records, the provider will never publish 10,000 record at once. Will publish 1,000 record, after some time again 1,000 record, after some time again 1,000 record. That way it will publish 10,000 records, 10,000 records 10 times. In chunks it will send the data. But in case of promise, promise is not that powerful to send the data in chunks. No, promise will always send the data at once. Let it be 10 records, let it be 100 records, let it be 1,000. It will always respond you all the data at once. But observable is not like that. It can send you the data in chunks over the period of time. Observable help to manage asynchronous data, such as data coming from a backend service. To use observables, Angular uses a third-party library called reactive extensions or rxjs. Observables are mainly used for event handling, for asynchronous programming, for handling multiple values. Whenever we talk about observable, directly relate with promise, then only we will be able to understand better. Observable, we can say observable is nothing but promise with some extra features. So if we try to compare promise and observable, and we will understand which one is better, let's see. When we talk about promise, it returns a single value. Single value means if it has to return 1,000 records, it will put all 1,000 records in one array, then it will send. But observable can send 100 record, 100 record 10 times, or 200 record, 200 record 5 times. That is how observable is more powerful than promise. Promise always will return a single data, whereas observable has the capability to send multiple data over the time. Once we trigger a promise, we cannot cancel it. So promise is not cancelable. Actually, there is no need to cancel a promise also, because promise promise means we send a request, we expect the data at one go. But in observable, what happens? We subscribe, and that subscription will be active for longer time. Whenever you want to unsubscribe, you can go and unsubscribe. One live example can be one live example can be Airtel. Airtel is a publisher or subscriber?
Publisher.
Airtel publisher.
Who is subscriber?
We are subscribers.
Yeah.
We are subscriber. So when we want to use one Airtel SIM in our mobile phone, we go to Airtel office and we ask them, hey, I want to become your consumer. I want to become your subscriber. We fill a form, we give the documents, we submit them. So since then, we became a subscriber of Airtel. So what happens when we become the subscriber of Airtel? Whenever a new plan comes up, they will send us a notification. Hey, today we launched a new plan. Are you interested? So whenever there is some change, whenever there is something they have to publish, they keep publishing, and only the subscribers they get notification. If I am not a Airtel user, I am a Jio user, I will not be getting the notification from Airtel company, right? Isn't it? Now, if we are a subscriber, it doesn't mean that we are a subscriber for lifetime. We can go and unsubscribe anytime. I started using a Airtel SIM. After 2 3 years, I thought this is not the best one. I'll go and ask them, I don't want to continue with you. I want to unsubscribe. So that is possible. So we can relate all these things with our day-to-day life also. Yes, observable is cancelable. Promise is not cancelable. There is no need to cancel also, because it is one time data. Next, when we use promise, the promise code is more readable. It is simpler than observable. We can use try catch, we can use async await. It is more readable and it is simple. But observable is not as simple as promise. It is little complex. Observable supports rxjs operators, rxjs pipes like map, filter, reduce, and other operators. Take, yesterday we used take, and there are hundreds of operators we have, we can use them. But we don't have such operators for promise. So this is how promise and observable are different. The main difference is promise returns all the data at once. Observable has the ability to return the data in chunks. Promise is not lazy, promise is eager, observable is lazy. Yeah, again in observable we have two type of observables. We have hot observable and cold observable. We'll discuss this little later. Before we understand hot and cold observable, first of all, we should understand how observable is different from promise and how it looks like. Let's understand. For that, what I will do, I'll create a component. I'll create a component. I'll say ng generate component, components. The component name is observable, observable demo one. Observable demo one is a component. Now I'll go to center and I will enable app observable demo one. Okay. Now observable demo 1. Yes. Yeah. Observable demo 1 is working fine. Now we'll understand promise and observable. From on init, I will call two methods. Promise demo is a method. Then observable demo is another method. I'll write promise demo method and I'll write observable demo method. So in promise demo, suppose I will use fetch method to fetch data from one URL. Let's say this is the URL. From this URL, I want to fetch some data. In JavaScript, we have a method called fetch. When we call fetch method, what it returns? What it returns?
Promise.
Const user promise. If I print this user promise, console.log user promise, it's one promise object. But if we use HTTP client, private HTTP client, not sure why import is not coming. Yeah, it's okay. HTTP client is a service from rectangular common HTTP. Now, in Angular, to fetch the data from API, we have HTTP client. Then what we do? What we do then? This dot HTTP client dot get. This is user. I'll call to do's here. To do's. Const to do's observable is equal to this one. If I print this console.log this, this will print a promise object. This will print a observable object. Let's see. You see, the first one is a promise object. The second one is observable object. Do you see?
Yes.
Hmm?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So if it is promise object, how to get the data? How to get the data from promise object?
Using their method.
User promise dot then. And how many callback functions then will take?
One success, one failure.
One success, which will give me the response. Console.log response. And what is the other one? Error.
Failure.
Okay. Console.log error. So this is how, if we have a promise, we have to write promise.then we'll take success and error callback function. If we have an observable, how to get the data from observable?
Subscribe.
Observable dot subscribe, right?
Yes.
Subscribe takes how many callback functions?
One.
One.
Subscribe takes how many callback function? Three callback functions. How many? Look at here. How many callback functions?
Three,
Three.
three, three.
One of three. The first one is partial data. First one is partial response. Second one is error. Third one is third one is completed. So first one is partial response. Partial response. This is first callback function. Every subs every observable while subscribing, it will have three callback functions. They are optional, not mandatory. They are optional, but we can write three callback functions. First one is partial response, or we can say response. Anything is fine. Anyway, it's a variable, so variable name can be anything. Second one is error, if something goes wrong. Third thing is completed. Completed means once we get the whole data. If a API has 100 objects, let's say this gives me 10 data, again 10 data. So 10 times this function will be called. This function will be called 10 times, but this function will be called one time. Console.log all data received. Console.log error. Console.log partial response. Do you understand what is observable and how to get the data from observable? Hmm? Is it clear?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
If we have one observable, observable dot subscribe. Subscribe will take three callback function: partial response, error, and completed. Now this to do's responds 200 200 data. Now if you ask me, okay, why it is returning me 200 response at once? Can you collect 2020 data 10 times? It's observable, right? Can you do that? No, I cannot do that. For that, if the API is written such a way, if the API is written such a way that it will give me 2020 data in 10 chunks, my UI code is written in such a way that it will be able to handle that. So our UI code is written in such a way that if the API returns me the data in 5 chunks, I will be able to handle that. But if the API itself is returning everything at once, we can do nothing. It it depends on the backend. Now there is another thing. The second thing, you see a striked out here. Strikeout. Subscribe is striked out. Why it is striked out? This is the old way of writing. This is the old way of writing. Inside subscribe, we write three functions. This is old way of writing. The new way of writing is, the new way to handle observable is to do's observable dot subscribe. Subscribe will take a function. In subscribe we can have one object. In that object we can have three functions. Both of them are correct only. This is old syntax, this is new syntax. How many functions? Three functions. First is next method. Next is a method. Partial response. Then then error. Then complete. Completed. Next, partial response. Okay. Yeah, completed will not take any argument. So this is how it should be. I'll write some logic also. Console.log partial response, console.log error, console.log completed. Subscribe. Give me a second. I'm missing the syntax. Completed. Complete. It's not completed, it's complete. You see, it's complete. It's complete, not completed, it's complete. So after subscribe, we will have we will have three things. Subscribe will take one object. In the object, we will get next. This is the response, partial response. Error, error, complete, completed. So here you see we got 200 data, then completed. Any questions so far?
So, sir, like as you mentioned, like 20 data per call we need to get. We cannot do anything if API returns everything in one go.
If API returns everything at one go, we can do nothing.
If API returns like 20 data means 10 times we will call the API.
No, this function will be called 10 times.
Okay. I mean, is it possible to show us a demo with this?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So API will be called once only, but we will get the
We will
data.
call the we will call the API only once. Now we are a subscriber. Whenever the API returns data, we will get a notification. This function will get a notification.
Okay.
Okay. Now, are we clear how to use promise, how to use observable, how many callback function observable takes? Is it clear?
Yes.
Okay. If it is clear, let me create another file, observable demo 2. Now, what we will do here, we will, in the last example, Angular is subscriber, this URL is publisher. Now, what we will do, we will create our, we will create our own publisher and we will publish the data in chunks. That is also possible. We can do that. Let's understand that. Suppose in Engine init, what I'll do, I'll create a publisher. I'll create a publisher. We will create our own publisher and we will create our own subscriber. Let's do that. Okay. Okay. From Engine init, I'll call a method, or I can write the logic directly here. Let's do one thing. Let's create a publisher here. Const publisher1 is equal to new observable, new observable. We have to create one observable instance. No. new observable, new observable. Quick fix should come. Huh. So we are creating a publisher which will publish the data. Const publisher one equal to new observable. We are creating one observable. This observable will take a function. That function will take one observer or publisher, and here we will say publisher dot next. Suppose it gives data. First time it gives 10 and 20. Publisher dot next, it gives 30 40. Publisher dot next, 50 60. So how many data in total it gives? In total it gives how many data?
6.
6. But in 3 chunks, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, this is not a simple, promise. This is one observable. If this is one observable, if the Java API or a .NET API will be written in such a way to return data in chunks, so here we have written the logic to give the data in chunks. Now whoever will subscribe, the subscriber 1 is equal to subscriber 1 will subscribe the data. We'll say publisher 1 dot subscribe. I want to subscribe. This subscribe can have one object with 3 functions. The first function is next, partial response. Then we can say console.log partial response. Then error, then complete. This is error, this is error. This will have nothing. Done. Now, what do you think? How many times this guy will be called?
Time.
How many? 3 times.
3 times.
3 times. So what we can do, we can have a const final array is equal to empty array, and every time this guy gets called, we can say final array equal to final array whatever is there. Final array and the partial response, right? We can do something like that. Yeah, this error is because of some scope. Yeah. So once this is done, once it is done, after everything is done, I'll print console.log. So how to collect the data, how to maintain the data, we can always write the logic and we can control that. Mm, partial response received. Always we can write this logic and control. We have to understand whether this function is being called 3 times or not. After all the data gets received, this function is getting called or not. This is what we need to verify. Now, if you go and see partial response, we got 1020. Again, partial response, we got 3040. Again, partial response, we got, right? Then you can see the complete function is not getting called. Why? Because the API is not notifying. If API has to notify, API has to write publisher dot complete. If it will write a complete function, then only this guy will be notified. That done. So now you see somehow huh, partial response. Partial response. What is there in partial response? Partial response is one array, right? Final array dot concat partial response. Yeah, we can write some logic and we can do it. You see? So we got partial response. Then in done, we got all the data. Is it clear? This publisher is publishing data in 3 chunks. This subscriber, this subscriber has subscribed to this publisher. Whenever there is a new data comes, this guy gets notified. This guy will be notified if something goes wrong. This guy will get notified once we receive the final set of data. Is it clear? This is publisher, this is consumer.
So, sir, what advantage we are getting? Because at the end of the day, we are again converting to 1,000 record and sending it to UI and loading a table, for example. So, what advantage we are getting, like in doing multiple times sending data?
Mm, No,
For example, yeah.
we will get lot of benefits. This may not be the best example, but we will get lot of benefits when we fetch data, when we fetch 10,000 records at once from API, and when we fetch the data in chunks, there will be benefits. This is not the best example because I'm just trying to
Hmm.
replicate something. I'm not able to replicate 100%.
Yeah, I got
Just
you.
to make you clear how it works,
Hmm.
somehow I managed to show you, right?
Yeah, we understand. I was letting some table example. Let's say 2,000 records are there, and so that is not the best example. Also, maybe.
Yeah. So here we are returning two numbers. The backend can return 10 objects also. It can be any data in any format. Now the concept is our UI is written in such a way that our subscriber is written in such a way that whenever backend returns a set of data, I'm able to handle that. I'm able to capture that. And when this observable will be useful in Angular, everything is observable. Everything is observable means in upcoming topics, we will discuss everything is observable. When we create a form, when we click a button, it returns observable. When we submit a form, it returns observable. Everything is observable. So all the upcoming topics will be dependent on observable.
And what we need to tell to the backend team, like, I mean, I just want to implement this kind of architecture in the project. So, what can I tell them that send the data in this way means which way? Like, I'll call the API and you will pass 100 rows. Again, I'll because I'll call one time only, right? So what kind of implementation they will do? I mean, as a UI developer, I need to tell them. So
So even they know when to use observable, how to publish data in chunks. Even Java people have a library called rxjava. When they
acha,
develop an API, they should understand how to use rxjava. If they are not using this library, if they are not publishing the data in chunks, we can do nothing.
nothing. Yeah.
So the way we have rxjs, the same way even they have rxjava. So they are the publisher. So when they are the publisher, they have to publish the data in chunks. But we don't have to think much about that. We just have to concentrate. If data comes in chunks, how I will be able to handle that.
Okay.
So that is our responsibility as a UI developer. And we will be 99% of the time, we are the consumers. I'm looking for the examples. These are again not the best examples. Yeah, but as I told, we will be the consumers. 99% of the time, we will be the consumer. We should focus much about this.
Consuming it. Yeah, I
Yeah, not
understand
the.
that how you are consuming, but line number 14, 15, 16, na, that like two arrays you are writing it over here, one array with two elements. But I was thinking like, how can I take a partial object? What can I write from a big object with this end? So I was thinking because I have never done it
No,
actually.
we cannot ask partial response from object. We can ask two employees, one employee, second employee, third employee, fourth employee, fifth employee, sixth employee. We cannot ask partial data from object. We can ask 100 users 10 times. That makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Now we will understand we will understand couple of more examples. Suppose, okay, I'll do one thing. I'll comment this much. What I'll do, I'll call a method demo. I'll call a method demo, and demo is a method. So rxjs, in rxjs we have lot of operators. rxjs is a library for composing asynchronous and event-based programs by using observable sequence. We have lot of rxjs operators. There are creation operators to create publisher. There are combination operators to combine the publishers. We have lot of operators. Today we will start with creational operators. If you search rxjs creational operators, we have lot of creational operators in rxjs. These are the most used ones. Using these operators we can create publishers. So let's create publishers. Now suppose I have cars. Let cars equal to Tata, Honda, Maruti. It is one array or it is one observable?
Array.
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 Can we say cars dot subscribe? Can we subscribe the data from here?
No, no.
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 No. So to convert this array to observable, rxjs provides one predefined method. The predefined method is from from. The function name is from. The function name is from. So this from will return cars cars publisher. This from is a predefined word from rxjs. So it will take one array and will return you one observable. If it is one observable, this observable we can subscribe. In the subscribe, again I can write all those methods, but the first one is very important. So let's write only one callback function, not three. Console.log val subscribe. Subscribe will take a callback function. Cars.subscribe. Cars publisher. Cars publisher dot subscribe. I'm getting the data. Subscribe. Any question here? How
No.
many times this will be called?
One time.
No,
One time.
Three
no,
times.
3 times. So indirectly, this from method will create a publisher with publisher.next data, publisher.next Honda, publisher.next Maruti. So this function internally will do that. Do you understand? So if you want to validate, we can always do that. If you add this piece of code, we will be able to validate. Yeah, let's validate now. So this should be called 3 times partial response. Partial response data, partial response Honda, partial response Maruti, then done. Is it clear?
So if we write inside the complete, it will be called once.
It will be called only once.
Okay. As you have written in the first callback function, so it was partial way it was working last
No,
time.
this is partial. This is error. This is complete. It can take maximum 3 callback functions. When we write only one, this is partial callback function.
Partial one. Yeah, yeah, that's what I'm telling. That's why it was calling that.
Yeah.
If
So
I
here
give
we
two
don't
callback empty, if I give two callback function empty, then it will be called once. In
two
that
callback
syntax.
function empty.
Empty means line number 39. Somehow, if I in this arrow syntax only, uh, I don't want to call first two callback function. I want this called one, last one.
Yeah, we can do that. The- Anyway, we have to write 3 functions.
Okay.
Hmm. Is it clear if we have an array, how can we convert that to publisher observable?
Yes.
Okay. Now, number number publisher. There is number publisher. There is something called op 10, 20, 30, 40. This of is a predefined function. We can call it as function. We can call it as operator. Few people they call it as function. Few people they call it as operator. So it is just a synonym. In rxjs world, most of the people they call it as operator, not a function, but it's a function. Now if I have to get the data from here, number publisher dot subscribe, the minimum syntax is this one. This one is the minimum syntax. We can always write that lengthy syntax, but this is the minimum syntax. So I'm able to get the data. So it takes all the values from here and converts it to observable. Of is a predefined operator. From is a predefined operator. Are we clear? Like that, we can create uh, we can create n number of publishers. Let's create another publisher. Let I want to generate number one, two, three, four, like that. What is the best name for that? Natural number.
Oh,
Okay. Okay. Let natural numbers is equal to interval. There is a predefined operator called interval 1000. After every 1 second, it will give me a new number. Now, this is a publisher. To subscribe, we have to write the subscription here. So, this is a publisher. This guy is a publisher. This guy is a subscriber. We are just getting used to with the syntaxes. We are just getting used to with the concepts. Don't worry, we have a lot to learn. Just let's make ourselves comfortable with observable terminologies. Okay, so this guy will create a publisher and this guy is subscribing in line number 45. So you will see the subscriber is getting data after every 1 second. Do you see that? The subscriber is getting invoked after every second. You see, the publisher keeps publishing the data, the subscriber keeps getting the data. So I'm not calling this method again and again and again. So whenever there is a new data, this guy gets a notification. The good thing is we can subscribe one publisher. If a publisher is there, we can fetch the data from that publisher in TypeScript file also. If you want to do it in HTML, that is also possible. In observable demo 2, if we want to get some data here, see, there is no subscriber now. If I want to write a subscriber here, I am a subscriber, then who is the publisher? The publisher is this. This is a publisher. If I write async pipe, if you remember, we didn't discuss this pipe, it was left over. So if you use this pipe after a publisher, it means we are able to subscribe the data in the HTML file. If a publisher is there, there are two chances. We can subscribe the data in TypeScript file using subscribe method. We can subscribe the data in HTML file using async method. So whenever there is a publisher, okay, this is not a this variable, so I have to store it in this variable, this dot natural numbers. If we don't store it in this object, HTML cannot access, right? We know that. So I have to store it in this variable, class variable, so that HTML can print it. So you can see the subscriber keeps getting the data. This is just a number. It can be anything else also. So whenever a new data gets pushed by the publisher, the subscriber gets a notification. Is it clear?
yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So, sir,
Yes.
form of these all things are converting to observable only, but form we use for array, of we use for numbers, correct?
No, from we use for array, of we use for individual values. It can be number, it can be string, it can be object, it can be anything but individual values. If I put it like this, it won't work. It became one
Oh,
array.
okay.
Yeah. For individual values of, for array it is from.
Form only for array. Object also it can be, right? Form.
Array of number, array of string, array of object,
Acha,
array
acha,
of
acha.
anything.
Hmm.
Yeah. So if we have a publisher, we can subscribe the publisher in two places. One is one is in TypeScript file using subscribe method. The second option is in HTML file using async pipe. Either way we can subscribe. Suppose, hope it is clear, right? Hope it is clear, right? Hmm? Yeah. Next. Suppose this publisher keeps publishing data. I don't want to take, I don't want to take, what happened? Okay. So you see, it keeps publishing the data and the subscriber keeps subscribing the data. Now, suppose the subscriber thinks, we can create publisher out of another publisher also. How? See, this publisher will keep publishing the data. Suppose I'll create another publisher, this dot natural numbers up to 5, up to 5. It is just a variable name, guys. I want to create a publisher out of another publisher. So, this publisher keeps publishing, but I want to create another publisher out of it. Natural numbers dot pipe, pipe take 5. So you see, this is how rxjs is useful. Suppose this publisher keeps publishing data. I want to create another publisher who will publish only 5 data. Then I'll write pipe take 5. If somebody is subscribing to this guy, this is a different guy and this is a different guy. If somebody is subscribing to this guy, somebody is subscribing to this guy, it will stop after some time. So you see, do you understand? So we can create one one publisher from another publisher. This is a publisher. This is also a publisher, right? Hope you know what is this publisher doing and what is this publisher doing, right?
Sir, repeat it once again. The take pipe is what it is doing.
This keeps publishing. I don't want all of them. I want only the first 5 data. So I will use a pipe. The pipe name is take. The pipe name is take. To use take pipe, I have to use a word called pipe. So publisher dot pipe take 5. It will create another publisher. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. So it will just rotate 0 to 5, not more than that.
Yeah. Like that, we have from, of, interval, range. We can create range, range from 10 to 30, range from 50 to 70. Like that we can create. Hmm? Yes, I know nobody in real time project will create this kind of publishers and this kind of consumers. But to understand these concepts, first of all, we have to start with number string only. Tomorrow, we will understand these operators, fork join, merge, all these things we will understand with real time examples. With API calls, we will see. Any question so far?
Sir, like take, we can skip also 5.
Uh, Good question. Like take five. Can we skip five? I think,
I think excluding 5.
yeah. We don't want the initial five data. We want the data after five. So we have to see one operator, rxjs operator take. Let's go to take. Next to take, there will be lot of other examples. Okay, take. So ABCD, take two will give me AB. Take last. You see, take last, take until, take while, skip. You got your answer?
Yes, sir. So with this, we can skip like first 5, then
Yeah,
the
yeah.
next 5 we will get.
Skip three. Hmm? Instead of take, we will say skip five.
So these are widely used in the project, like I mean, most used.
No, tomorrow we are going to discuss most used operators.
Okay, okay.
So the second one is skipping five. Hmm? Right? Yeah. So
So
there are, huh,
I feel like the way we learn JavaScript and doing some exercise, we need to do the same thing for rxjs because I think it's a big topic.
yeah, there are lot of operators. That is why today, whatever I discussed, we are just making ourselves comfortable with rxjs. So in real time projects, nobody will create array of strings, array of numbers, but at least we got to know how to play with rxjs, right? Once
Right.
we are comfortable with rxjs, when we start discussing complex examples, we can better relate. So at least today we understood what is publisher, what is consumer, how to create publisher, how to create subscriber. A subscriber can take three callback function. What is the first callback function? What is the second callback? What is the third callback? Then how to create our own publisher using these creational operators from, off, interval, range. Then we also discussed how to create a publisher out of another publisher using pipe skip, pipe take. Then how to subscribe one publisher in HTML file. So we understood all these concepts. This topic is heavily used. Let's make ourselves comfortable with all these things first of all. See, everything in Angular is observable after today. Form is observable, routing is observable, everything is observable. Yeah, I did push the code. Please, go through these things.
Yes, I will go through.
This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong input. Yeah. So please try to go through these two files, observable demo 2, observable demo 1, and also open this rxjs website. Try to understand what is rxjs. It's common in all the technologies. We just have to understand the concept, not the methods. So try to understand what is observable, why we have observable, how it is different from promise, and just understand the examples. If you search from, what is from, you will get to know what is from. At least from pass one array, it will give you observable. And they have graphical presentation which is easy to understand. From, take, the examples are there. Please try to understand. Tomorrow we will discuss the most commonly used operators in Angular application. In Angular application, we will not use all of them. There are hundreds of operators. The most commonly used ones are tap, fork join, distinct until changed, take until, fork join, merge map, switch map, concat map. With real-time examples, we will see tomorrow. Okay.
Okay, sir.
See you tomorrow then.